Hi, it's Harry from Monde Sportif with Toby from Monde Sportif for the transfer show. We're talking about all things transfers. And firstly, what better place to start? Pretty much top of the alphabet. It's Arsenal. What do you think about your club's transfer window so far? Not much activity, but one big signing in the offing.
Yeah, it's got the it hasn't actually got the here we go just yet from Fabrizio, but it's pretty much got the here we go from the guy's girlfriend themselves. Calafiori's girl breaking the news that he's about to make his move to Arsenal from Bologna after a very good season, very good Euros as well. I'm pretty happy with this one from what I've seen of him so far. Looks like he's going to come in and play on the left hand side of the defense. It's going to make it a pretty big back line, four guys over 6 foot with him, Gabriel, Saliba, and Ben White. So I think he's what we needed and looks like a good signing. And it looks as well like we've beaten some really big teams to the transfer. Apparently, Real Madrid are interested, Juventus. They say one big Premier League club, probably Chelsea, came in for him as well. So I think it shows that Arsenal are big guns again in the transfer market.
Yeah, I think it does indeed. And it doesn't seem like there's much more than that. But I know you've got a real ear to the ground. And I know Smith Rowe's been linked with a move away to the likes of Fulham and Palace. But other than that, what can you fill us in on?
To be honest, from what I've heard, it looks like it's mostly homegrown players leaving, which obviously, as we've heard with all of this FFP stuff, you sort of get total profits out of the homegrown players leaving. So yeah, they're talking about Smith Rowe, Fulham, Crystal Palace, both very interested. But I think we're really trying to play hardball this time because we've lost too many players in the past for free, for low fees when they're worth a lot more. So I think we're saying with Smith Rowe, he's worth 40 million. And Ketia is another one, but I think we want at least 30, 35 million, I'm hearing. Marseille apparently are very interested in him, despite the transfer of Greenwood, which I want to ask you about afterwards. And the other one is Reece Nelson, and I've heard West Ham could be in for Nelson. And we're looking again at 25 million. Perhaps we can go higher than that. All of these players are on long contracts. They're all being paid well by the club. That could prove to be an issue, actually, because I'm not sure if these other clubs can offer them the same kind of wages. I'm not sure any of them want to leave Arsenal, but obviously they've got to put their careers first at some point. And all of them, I can't see making it in our first team. They're all good squad players, but I think it might be time for at least a couple of those to move on. Going back to what I just mentioned there, Mason Greenwood, Man United, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think the club handled it in the right way, but took a really bad way of doing it. So, the best thing was to get rid of a player, of course, but and never bring him back into the fold and never play in the United shirt after the video emerged. And he hasn't, thankfully, played in the United shirt since the video emerged on the audio footage. But I think the fact that we considered it for too long and then there was the backlash and then it seemed like I think Ineos said a decision would be made, and then in the end we were looking for money from him. So it's not really paying anyone in a good light, and now it's Marseille's problem, and their fans can cheer him if that's what they feel they need to do. But I'm glad we've seen the back of him.
I mean, yeah, just to come in on it quickly, I think I don't think United handled it great at first, but I guess in more recent times they've handled it better. And at the end of the day, they got a good fee for him, which obviously from a business point of view, they had to try and do. And by all accounts, they've got a 50% sell-on clause as well. So he's still very young, 22, 23. Could well be that he moves on somewhere else afterwards. But yeah, I don't think he'll be anywhere near English football. And I don't think he should be, to be honest, ever again.
And just to come in on our other transfer news, obviously it's not just the sale of a dodgy player, very much a dodgy player. It is also the news we got Lenny Euro, exciting centre-back, only 18 years old. I think he won't be the only centre-back signing, but Matters de Ligt has obviously got a bit more experience. He'd be my choice now, even though I do like Bramthwaite as a player. I just think having two young guns in there is a bit of a risk when you want a bit of experience. But at the same time, we have gone down the route of like Varane and Casemiro, and that's not really had a long-term benefit to the club. So I think it's good we're investing in young talent, but I'd rather go for de Ligt because I think he's still young, but he has that little extra experience over Bramthwaite, and that helps when you've got two new players come in that both potentially below the age of 21.
Yeah, on Lenny Yoro though, do you think you've overpaid for this guy? I mean, to me, from the outside, it looks like Man United are kind of becoming the joke team of Europe. Like clubs know that they can ask for any silly amount of money from them, and you'll probably pay it. We look at Anthony, we look at Sancho, we look at Højlund last summer, paying 80 odd million for a striker who'd only ever scored 10 goals in a season for his club. I mean, all of at least they're going for younger players now. They've potentially got sell-on values in the future. They've got potential. Do you think they've overpaid on this one?
I haven't really seen much of a player, but I know Real Madrid were interested but wanted to wait for the contract to run down. So in that sense, you could look at it two ways. You could look at, well, Real Madrid don't think he's worth bidding for now, which is a fair point. But the other thing is Real Madrid had interest in the profile of the player. So obviously he does have potential. And I say of Højlund, I think there's still very much time. And yes, when United are linked to a player because of history and because of the heritage of the club, it's always an extra fee, an extra 5 million that we command, even more sometimes for players. But I think Højlund will prove his worth, and I hope Lenny Yoro will. It is quite a lot, but Braithwaite would have been even more, and I don't think Braithwaite has got the same ceiling maybe that Lenny Yoro has. I think Braithwaite's going to be a strong, reliable English centre-back in years to come. But I think Lenny Yoro's got that extra excitement about him that he could really be one of the best in that position.
And United last season, obviously, it wasn't just the problem at the back. Like clearly, they're prioritizing signing players at the back, but at the front, they weren't scoring enough goals. Yes, injury problems came into it, and players like Rashford just having complete off seasons. But I don't know, they looked so far off it last season that from my point of view, they need to sign players all over the pitch. Just to have a chance of getting back into the Champions League, really. I don't see them as title contenders this season.
No.
Do you think these signings are going to make a big difference? Do you think, I mean, what are you thinking about it?
I think we need to keep McTominay, but then at the same time, this Ugarte from Uruguay sounds like, again, a defensive player. He's a 6, and he's very much not an 8 or a 10. He's a 6. I think that will help add a bit of aggression and tenacity in the midfield that's sometimes been a bit too passive. Xerxes, it worries me a bit that he didn't get that many minutes in the Euros. It feels like if he was a player that had that game-changing influence, or at least shown a degree of signs for that, he'd have a bit more of a role to play in that tournament for Netherlands. So that worries me a bit. And so, yeah, it does. But hopefully Sancho will be like a new signing. That's the big one. Is Sancho going to come back and suddenly have an Indian summer and reignite his career especially at United? I hope so. I hope that he doesn't go to PSG, because then we have to get a replacement in, and that's not guaranteed. And I think he did do well in the Champions League, but it does look like there's still potential movement for him to go even in this window, and even despite them sort of letting bygones be bygones.
Yeah, it looks like Sancho for now. It's all calmed down a bit. They've supposedly made up, but I still think he'll be jumping ship if he gets a good offer, and I kind of think he should, because I think he's been disrespected by the club just as much as he disrespected them. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if he moved on. Moving on, Manchester City. A few interesting rumours with them. Obviously, this City side, they feel like they've been the same players year on year. They've moved a couple on, they've brought a couple in, but more or less it just feels like it's same old City. But the ones they're talking about leaving this summer, Ederson in goal. They're talking about potential move to Saudi, and the same with Kevin De Bruyne. What do you make of these rumours?
I think one of those two will go. I'd be absolutely gobsmacked if both go, because I think that's two very big players of the City dynasty over the last few wins out of the picture completely. I think Ederson's still one of the best goalkeepers in the world, and the goalkeepers age slower. So unless he really, really wants to go, and maybe he does because of the money, De Bruyne, I can see it a bit more. He's had his injuries. His influence has waned a little bit, but then I heard maybe rumblings that even Julian Alvarez was linked with a few clubs. And I think if De Bruyne goes, I think they need to keep Julian Alvarez, because he can sometimes play a bit deeper behind Haaland, and that's another option. Otherwise, they kind of cut themselves a bit short. I've heard Eze linked as well, but I don't. I think he's a really good player, but again, he's had injuries, and also I think it's a developmental one where I rate him incredibly highly, but I don't think he's quite at the level of a regular week in, week out City starter yet. So I think they'd have to be quite careful with how they go about that one. So I think, yeah, I can see De Bruyne going. Ederson, I'll be a bit shocked by, and Alvarez, I think, should stay if De Bruyne is going.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think that all of these City um, outgoings must be related to Guardiola, to be honest, because obviously it's sort of a well known within the football world that Guardiola is probably going to be moving on at the end of this season. And the way I see it is the club are going to be desperate to hold on to as many players as they can when Guardiola leaves to avoid this kind of changing of the guard and everyone leaving at once and having a big falling off a cliff like, well, Arsenal when Wenger left, United when Ferguson left, of course. So I have to say that I think it links to that. And I think these players are seeing this season as perhaps the opportunity to jump ship early. The club might be a bit more willing to let them leave. And then this is them doing that ahead of the inevitable Guardiola leaving when the club are going to be playing hardball a lot more. Liverpool's transfer dealings so far, what are you making of them?
I can't recall anything from Liverpool.
There's been rumours. Obviously, keeping hold of Salah was the
keeping
main
hold of
thing,
Salah is a big one, but yeah, I think the manager's obviously the main one for Liverpool. I don't know that many of the rumours. It seems quite even quieter than Arsenal. Who obviously Calafiori is a big signing, a big player in the Euros, and a bit of a hype around him. But there hasn't really even been a player like that linked with Liverpool. So I can't, unless can you enlighten me on any of those?
To be honest, no. But I think they are looking at potential players to replace Salah. For me, Elise would have been great for them. Obviously, Bayern got him. Yeah, Bayern got him early on. Great signing, not expensive either. Yeah, I think that's a great signing for them. Gutting for Palace because they were looking really good at the back end of last season. It'll be such a shame for them if they lose him and Eze. Perhaps they'll just lose him in the end because I'm not sure who's coming in for Eze. Tottenham, perhaps, maybe. But yeah, there's been a few I've seen linked with Liverpool, but nothing concrete so far. And Chelsea are doing a Chelsea. They're signing players left, right, and centre. Not heard of most of them. By all accounts, they've signed some really top teenagers. God knows what's going on with them and financial fair play. I don't think anyone has a clue. They're making a mockery of the whole situation, really, aren't they?
Yeah, with their long-term contracts. And all I say is Kin and this is the last one for me, Toby, is Kin and Dewsbury Hall, I think is a good squad player. I think he did well in the championship. He's clearly not a championship player. Hopefully the chemistry of Enzo Maresca will be good as well. And could he be a decent fit? I think so. I think he's almost in that, like if Gallagher was a winger, he'd almost have that kind of profile about him. But yeah, that's the final one for me. Any final thoughts from you, Toby, on Chelsea or anything else?
No, I mean there's a few big players around Europe that are sort of angling for moves. One of them is Osimhen. Looks like he could well end up at PSG. Obviously, PSG have got a few massive gaps to fill in their team. Osimhen's getting heavily linked there. I do just to finish where we started off in terms of what Arsenal need. A striker of that profile, many people think we need. I'm really torn on this one. I'm going to sit on the fence because I think Havertz was so good in the second half of last season for us. He just brought us a really good balance to the team. But if Havertz got injured, we kind of proved that it doesn't work with Jesus. If we lose Nketiah, then we 100% need another option. I was a bit gutted we missed out on Sesko because I think he would have been a really good option. Right sort of profile, young player with a high ceiling, as you said, as you've been using earlier. A player like that, 2-footed, good in the air. I think he would have been perfect. But I also think what Arsenal desperately need as well is another midfielder. There's been talk earlier in the window of somebody like Bruno Guimaraes. Can't see us paying 100 million for a player like that.
No, he's
An
good.
extra
He's not that
midfielder.
good.
More recent times, another one that's been getting linked with Arsenal is Mikel Merino, who was obviously pretty good at the Euros.
Yeah, I
Might
can see
be a
that
sort
being a
of
good fit.
Xhaka replacement, perhaps, which we didn't really get last season. Obviously, we got Rice in, but he played a slightly different role. And the other one is Zubimendi, who came on against England at halftime in the final, and they brought him on for Rodri, and he took over and looked very good in that game when many people thought he'd struggle. So yeah, that's what I think Arsenal need in the rest of this window. Anyway, anything else there, Harry?
No, that's it for me. So thank you very much for your time, Toby. It's a pleasure talking transfers with you. And be sure to like and subscribe, Monde Sportif fans and viewers. We may have another one of these. I'm sure we will, because it's only July before the end of a window. So stay tuned.